Alright, welcome to our 9.4 video. Today we are continuing to solve quadratic equations. If you recall from our last lesson that when a quadratic equation is set equal to 0, that does mean to solve or find the solutions. The methods we used in 9.3 were solving by graphing or solving by square roots. Today we will be solving by factoring. So that's why we did a factoring review to prepare yourself for this lesson. The key to solving quadratic equations by factoring is what we call the zero product property. The zero product property. Recall product meaning multiplication. So we're looking at this statement right here. A times B equals 0. In order for that to be a true statement, either A would have to be 0 or B would have to be 0. So in order to multiply to get to equal 0, one of your factors would have to equal 0. So here's an example. We're multiplying x plus 3 times x plus 2, and that's set equal to 0. So we know when they're set equal to 0, that does mean to solve, so that's why we use this zero product property, meaning that either this first one needs to be set equal to 0, or this second factor needs to be set equal to 0. So in both cases, I will take my factors and set them equal to 0. When I do that, I can now solve for x. So in solving for x here, I can subtract 3 from both sides, giving myself x equals negative 3. Or in this case, I would subtract 2 from both sides, giving myself x equals negative 2. So in this case, those are my solutions, x equals negative 3 and x equals negative 2. So we're going to continue this on the next page.
Okay, now we're going to practice using this zero product property, and we already have it factored out for us, and we say that 4t plus 1 times t minus 2 equals 0. So we're going to set each of those equal to 0. So 4t plus 1 equals 0, and t minus 2 equals 0. So we're going to go through and solve the first one and subtract 1 from both sides, canceling that out. So we're left with 4t equals negative 1. Then we're going to divide both sides by 4, and we get t equals negative 1/4. On the other one, we're going to add 2 to both sides. The left side will cancel out, and we are left with t equals 2. So our two solutions in this one are t equals negative 1/4 and t equals 2. Let's do another example here. We're going to set both of these equal to 0, so 7n minus 2 equals 0, and 5n minus 4 equals 0. Here we're going to add 2 to both sides, canceling that out, and left with 7n equals 2, divide by 7, and n equals 2/7. The second one, we are going to add 4 to both sides. We're left with 5n equals 4, and then divide by 5, and we have n equals 4/5. So our two solutions for this problem would be 2/7 and 4/5. Again, remember, set both of them equal to 0, solve them separately, and those are your two solutions. You may go ahead and pause the video, do your 3 got it problems, and check back to see if you are correct. Okay, hopefully your answers match up with ours. The first one, you should have had x equals negative 1 and x equals 5. The second one, you should have got x equals a negative 3/2 and x equals 4. And the last one, you should have got y equals negative 1/2 and y equals negative 14. I recommend pausing the video now so you can make sure that your work matches up with ours before moving on.
Alright, so continuing on using the zero product property. However, you will see in this problem here that it is not factored for you. So you do need to factor the problem first, then set each factor equal to 0 to solve. So we'll go ahead and start here by multiplying our a times c. So 1 times 15 gives us 15, which means we are looking for the factors of 15 that add to 8. The factors of 15 that add to 8. So hopefully you know that that is 5 and 3. Because a is 1 here, we already know that those are going to be a part of our problem. We will have x plus 5 and x plus 3. And we will equal it to 0 just as it was in the problem. So now this mirrors what we had on the first page we just did. So go ahead and set both of your factors equal to 0 now. And solve for x. So in both cases, I get x equals -5, and over here, x equals -3. What this means, if you were to type this in to your y equals, if your calculator, you were graphing it, these two solutions, remember, are where your graph is going to cross the x-axis. That's what our solutions are to a quadratic equation. All right, continuing on, going to factor again. So a times c, 2 times 18 is 36. So we're looking for the factors of 36 that are going to add to -15. So in this case, that's -12 and -3. So since a is not 1, I do need to go through my factor by grouping process. So I will take my factors and rewrite my original equation. So now I have 2a squared minus 12a minus 3a plus 18. It is still equal to 0. I'll bring that back in a little bit just to save myself some space. So go ahead and get the GCF of your first two terms. So that would be 2a. We would be left with a minus 6. And then your GCF of your last two terms, which would be -3. And we are left with a minus 6. So your factors are 2a minus 3 and a minus 6. Now, I did say it was equal to 0, so I'm bringing that back in here now because that tells me to go ahead and set each factor equal to 0 and solve for a. So 2a minus 3 equals 0 and a minus 6 equals 0. So in both, I will solve for a, adding 3 here. So 2a equals 3. Then divide by 2 on both sides. Now I have a by itself. 3 halves for that answer. And also over here, I will add 6 to both sides and get that a is 6. So go ahead and complete the problems now on the Got It. Pause your video and check back to make sure you're correct. Alright, so checking your answers. For A, you should have got Q equals 2 or Q equals -7/3. So this does look like a lot of work. It is a process, so if your work does not match, pause the video and see if you can figure out where you went wrong. And then for B, P equals -5 and 4.
Okay, we're going to solve this the same way, but if you can notice, it is not written in standard form yet, so we have to write it in standard form first. So we are going to subtract 5 from both sides. So we're left with 4x squared minus 19x minus 5. And since we subtracted 5 from the right side, we are now left with 0. Just like the problems before, that's what we wanted. So now we have to factor our new equation. And again, a is not 1, so we're going to multiply a times c. So 4 times -5 is -20. The factors of -20 that add to a -19 are going to be a -20 and a +1. Again, a is not 1, so we need to rewrite our b term. That's 4x squared minus 20x plus 1x minus 5. Again, it's going to be equal to 0. We need to group our first two terms and find our GCF. Our GCF is a 4x. When you divide your 4x out, you're left with x minus 5. The second one, there is not a whole number that we can pull out, so we're just going to pull out a 1, and you're left with x minus 5. So our two answers, our two solutions, are going to be 4x plus 1 and x minus 5. Again, it equals 0. Now we're going to set each one of these equal to 0 to solve. So we are going to subtract 1 from the left side. We're left with 4x equals -1, then divide by 4, and x equals a -1/4. Going through our second one, we're going to add 5 to both sides, and we're left with x equals 5. So our two solutions are going to be x equals -1/4 and x equals 5. So again, you're doing the same process, you just have to get it in standard form first by getting it set equal to 0 and moving everything over to the same side. Go ahead and pause the video now, you work on your Got It, and check back. Okay, as you factor this one and get it in standard form first, you realize that your C is a perfect square and so is your A. And since A is 1, you can just write your factors as your answers. So we have x plus 7 and x plus 7. Again, notice since they are the same thing, you only have to solve it once. So we are going to subtract 7 from both sides and we get x equals -7. Now since we only have one answer, there's only one solution for this problem. Or the other ones, we had 2 solutions. Here we only have 1 solution. Okay, again, make sure that we are writing down questions. Some of you have said in class that we forget the questions that we had and we don't know what questions we had. Make sure that we write them down. That way we can ask in class and we can get those clarified for you.